The TV show Black Mirror is genuinely one of the scariest shows that I've ever seen. But what if some of its storylines actually started to come true? Since the episode Nosedive, where you basically leave people Google reviews, we've seen the potential introduction of social credit over in China, and we don't quite have drones the size of bees yet, but people at Harvard are currently trying to make them. And for contacts with cameras, Samsung actually ended up getting a patent for smart contacts. But one of the most prevalent storylines that's actually trending today is the episode with Miley Cyrus in it. In this episode, she plays a singer named Ashley O, and she's famous for her sound, her look, her originality, and even though she seems happy on the inside, she's very miserable. She's being given medication illegally to stabilize her mood, and it gets to the point where her management has so much control that it really isn't even her anymore. And I remember watching this and thinking how sad this would be, and would we even know if a celebrity was going through this? And then we had the introduction of the Free Britney movement. And so many of Britney's fans were able to identify that she was in trouble before she announced to the public. So how did we even get to knowing that Britney was in trouble? Well, a few fans here and there had talked about it briefly, whether it was a celebrity or a fan. The first time it was really mentioned was 2017 on a podcast called Britney's Gram. It was there to dissect Britney Spears' Instagram account, which there was a lot of weird things on. For example, she was putting a lot of timestamps on her Instagram photos, almost as if she was leaving some sort of a paper trail. And a lot of her photos were representative of her being locked up in a metaphorical sense. Like this photo right here says, "I put myself in a timeout until I can play nice with others. This may take a while," and the caption says, "A while? How about a decade?" Well, in 2020, there was a video of her that went viral on TikTok of her supporting LGBTQIA+. People were a little concerned about how she was behaving, and they told her if she needed help to wear yellow in her next video. And guess what? She wore yellow, so people commented to wear blue in her next video. And she responded by wearing blue. So everyone started to wonder about her conservatorship. Who was controlling her? Why did she need help? And why does her paperwork say she has dementia? So how can someone complete 4 world tours, record 4 albums, while also performing and selling out an entire Las Vegas show, while her paperwork says she has dementia? In 2008, Britney was placed under a temporary conservatorship at the age of 26. She had her famous breakdown that became household news overnight on January 4th of 2008. She had really hit rock bottom and was going through her custody dispute with Kevin Federline, and then was locked up again around January 31st. And this particular psych hospital that she was taken to had less than the best reviews. And this is when her conservatorship became permanent, due to her being unfit to take care of herself. Yet 2 months in, she ended up showing up for a role on How I Met Your Mother, and then wiped the floors at the VMAs, winning all the awards. In 2009, she had her circus tour, and a voicemail between her and her lawyer was leaked, saying that she desperately wanted to get out of this conservatorship, but that her father was threatening her. She did her Femme Fatale tour next, and then in 2012, she was an X Factor judge. Yet she was still deemed too unfit to take care of herself. Part 4 to Free Britney. So Britney had even tried to bring up her conservatorship on the Jonathan Ross show, but that part was cut. And in 2016, people noticed that she posted a photo with Hillary using the hashtag I'm with her, but then had to remove it, which turned out later because she couldn't vote. And after that, she was supposed to perform for her new Domination show, but then announced that she couldn't go due to her father's health issues, which it later turned out that her father, Jamie, had actually canceled the show because she wasn't taking her new medication. So once he pulled it, he told her to just blame it on his health issues. And his own grandson ended up coming on to Alive and talking about how awful he is. And in April of 2020, she was sent back to a mental health facility, which the anonymous paralegal who gave information to the podcast said that she had been forced there between mid-January all the way up to April. And then Kevin Federline ended up charging Jamie Spears for allegedly abusing one of their kids. And because he's Britney's conservator, she ended up only having 30% visitation with her kids because he basically owns her. And after the documentary came out, she said she was embarrassed, but was that really Britney? Part 5 to Free Britney. Well, as we've stated, she's had very weird stuff on her Instagram, but it seems as though midway through the content changed, and someone by the name of Cassie Petrie, who's her social media manager, has been posting for her. At least we know some of the time, maybe not all the time. And then on June 23rd, as we all heard, Britney broke her silence. She came out and shared everything that she's been through under her conservatorship to the courts. 13 years of her rights have been fully taken away. She can't have a baby, she can't get married, she can't take out her IUD. She's forced to work even when sick, can't even change her own kitchen cabinets. And whenever she actually tried to set up boundaries, she was put on lithium. Which I didn't know much about this drug, but this is what the holistic psychologist on Instagram said about it. Basically, no one is actually looking out for her mental health, and everyone is banking on her payroll. From her parents to her sister to everyone in her circle. And if you want to hear more about her sister, Jamie Lynn Spears, go to my Instagram, go to my middle reels tab, and I'm going to be talking about all the stuff that she's gotten into, because there seems to be such a double standard in this family. Brittany's father is an alcoholic and abusive, yet he's been deemed fit to take care of her. Last part to free Brittany. So since all of this has come out, there has been a huge public reaction and an overwhelming amount of support. Iggy Azalea even came out and said how she was a witness to this behavior, and she was even invited to testify before Congress. Christina Aguilera released this statement about her, and as we've been watching her Instagram again lately, we've seen that she's been on a trip, yet these photos have been used for her previously a year ago. So it's probably just Cassie running her account. Really, Brittany just needs healing and support right now, and I'm sure there's going to be even more updates by the time I come out with this video. And this whole story really shows the importance of autonomy. There's other celebrities like Amanda Bynes who are also under conservatorships, and we really don't know how bad those are. The court system seemed to be just so messed up, so people talking about it and actually providing social pressure helps. So we'll continue to talk about it, and hopefully it'll save Brittany. Something that is just a weird fear of mine is doctors pretending to be doctors. Like not actually having their licensure, but just playing the role, and secretly killing people while doing so. And yes, this has happened before. The most haunted hotel in America is known as the Crescent Hotel. I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but I loved staying up at night watching ghost hunters. I would run around with my little EMF detector seeing if I could find ghosts myself. Well, my favorite episode of Ghost Hunters actually covered the Crescent. They ended up actually making contact with one of the ghosts, but I never really deep dived into how creepy this hotel's history actually is. So the Crescent Hotel was built in 1986. And it was a resort for the wealthy, rich and powerful. But pretty fast, they found this whole hotel to be very unmanageable. And it was weirdly very accident prone in the building process. There was a stonemason named Michael who passed away, but we'll get to that later. Well, it reopened in 1908 as a college for girls. This photo gives me very much Midsummer vibes. While this college was considered prestige, they covered up a death. Part 2 to the Crescent Hotel. Well, one of the girls in this conservatory ended up falling for a guy. She ended up getting pregnant, and it was a huge deal during this time to be unwed and pregnant. On top of this, her dad forbade her from being with him. So she threw herself off the top of the building. The college completely covered it up, went about their business, and kept up with their high-priced tuition. But they only lasted until 1924. Well, all the way in Iowa, a man named Norman Baker was a radio host. Very eccentric, had a big personality. And while there isn't a whole lot of information on how he came to this conclusion, he decided that he was going to be a doctor without any kind of license or experience. He claimed that he had discovered a variety of cures to numerous diseases, but it didn't take long for Iowa to figure out that he did not have the medical training, so they ran him out. Well, Mr. Baker was not giving up. And on his ventures where he could find a new place where he could cure people, he came across the Crescent. And in 1937, he opened the Baker's Cancer Curing Hospital. Hundreds of people checked into this hospital, and hundreds did not check out. Part 3 to the Crescent Hotel. It honestly breaks my heart because so many sick and desperate people showed up to his hospital because he literally claimed that he had the cure. But what his cure was injections from a mixture of glycerin, alcohol, and tea from watermelon seeds and clover leaves. And these injections were apparently extremely painful and happening 5 to 7 times a day. Patients would be in severe pain. And when they started to get extremely sick, they would be separated off from everyone else in an annex that was once used as the servants' quarters from the hotel before. And to give some perspective on the creepiness of the hotel today, that place is now a suite that you can spend the night in. And Mr. Baker was considered to have killed about 300 people because there's 300 names that were never checked out. And he actually killed them indirectly because he made his nurses do all the injections. He actually couldn't stand the sight of any medical procedure. He somehow got recognized by the American Medical Association and ended up making millions in today's money. And after people would pass away, he would take them down to the morgue, which is now the basement of the hotel. Part 4 of the Crescent Hotel. So you can still go down to this basement and look at all the gurneys, the wheelchairs, the medical equipment, along with a ton of jars. Some of these are filled with his concoction, some are filled with human remains. And as they've continued to build along the area, they have found more of Norman's things. Just as recent as 2019, they were excavating the area and ended up finding 500 items that included more jars filled with human remains like tumors and also more of his little cure. As you can imagine, with all of the death that happened here, this place is extremely haunted. Listed as being one of the top hotels you don't want to stay at. There's so many accounts of people staying here and talking about their experience along with photos online, and people sharing just how frightening it is. Well, besties, I think we should go stay there. It's only 3 hours away from me, so I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to go drive. And I will be vlogging my experience for YouTube, which is linked in my bio. But in the meantime, if you want to hear about the specific ghosts that haunt this hotel, go to my Instagram, go to the middle reels tab. It's really interesting and you get to learn how people outside of the hospital passed away. If you guys want to talk about the worst mom in the history of moms, let's talk about the case of Diane Downs, who literally attempted to murder all 3 of her children in order to get a man to fall in love with her. So what exactly creates a monster like this? Well, Diane was born August 7th of 1955 in Phoenix, Arizona. Most of her life, she was pretty well behaved, but she started to rebel against her parents around high school. She cut her hair, had a really edgy phase, and got super boy crazy. And she started to date guys, which was way outside of her strict family's rules. And she fell in love with a boy named Steve Downs. They were high school sweethearts, but the second that college hit, they ended up going separate ways. He joined the Navy, and she went to Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College. And while they said that they would stay faithful to each other, she immediately started to hook up with other guys when she got there, and was expelled for her promiscuous behavior, and had to go back and live with her strict parents. While Steve came back, he forgave her, and they ended up running away together and getting married on November 13th of 1973. They were known to fight constantly, but in 1974 they had their first child together, making everything worse. Part 2 to the Diane Downs case. Well, the marriage between her and Steve was beyond rocky, and having their first daughter together, Christy, did not help that improve. And 6 months after she was born, Diane ended up leaving Christy with her dad so she could join the Navy, which only lasted 3 weeks because she had to leave for severe blisters. They had another kid in 1976 named Cheryl, and Steve had a vasectomy immediately after this, but then Diane was pregnant again. So I guess you can imagine how that happened. She did not go through with the pregnancy, but her and Steve stayed together. Later, they moved to Mesa, Arizona, got new jobs, and Diane was having affairs with all of her new co-workers. Got pregnant again, kept this one, and had a boy named Danny. Steve actually still decided to stay for the sake of the kids, and wanted to remain a father figure to Danny, but eventually they ended up getting divorced in 1980, and this is when things got significantly more unstable. Diane started to bounce from relationship to relationship, moving in and out with different men, and then decided to become a surrogate in order to make money, even though she didn't pass all the psychiatric exams. Terrifying. But everything changed when she met a man named Nick. Part 3 to the Diane Downs case. So this is when Diane met Robert Knickenbocker, who went by the name Nick, and she swore that this man was the love of her life. He had separated from his wife and describes the relationship as being intense and overwhelming. He eventually broke it off with her though because he didn't like kids. And this is when Diane became devastated and angry at her own children for getting in the way of her love. Her kids and her moved to Cottage Grove, Oregon, but still couldn't seem to forget Nick. She would obsessively write to him, and she really stopped paying attention to her kids' health. They often went hungry, went without coats in the cold. It was even said by a neighbor that Cheryl had mentioned that she was scared of her mom. Well, on Thursday, May 19th of 1983, everything went down. This story is from her perspective, by the way. They were coming home from a friend's house whenever Diane decided to take the kids on a scenic route. They did this often to explore. Hungry Like the Wolf started to play on the radio, and this is when she noticed a bushy-haired stranger signaling her over from the middle of the road. And at 10 p.m., with her kids asleep in the back of the car, she got out to talk to him, and he immediately demanded for her keys. Part 4 to the Diane Downs case. So immediately after this stranger demanded for her keys, they had some sort of a struggle, in which he shoots all 3 of her kids and then shoots her in the left arm. In order to distract him, she pretends to throw her keys in the bush, and then uses the keys that are actually in her hand to turn on the car and then drive wildly like a lunatic to the hospital. So she pulls up to this hospital with her kids in bad condition, and all of the medical professionals that were there that night were shocked by her reactions. Her daughter Cheryl ended up passing away, and Danny and Christy were literally clinging to life. And she showed no emotion at all. Not only had she wrapped her own gun wound and not her kids', but she was worried about her new car having blood on it. She seemed relieved that Cheryl was dead, and was shocked when she found out that Danny, her 3-year-old child, had been paralyzed. And she was only shocked because he wasn't hit in the heart. Christy had had a stroke, but she was still alive, so currently Diane was the only witness. And a lot of moms actually felt for her during this time, and were even scared to leave with this man on the loose. But the public opinion didn't last for long. Part 5 to the Diane Downs case. Even though the police were already suspicious of Diane, because she was the only witness, they had to rule out her story. So they got a composite sketch of the guy, and they ended up searching the whole area, where they only found some bullet casings. And her interviews during this time, if you guys have ever seen them, are so weird, definitely worth watching. This woman was eating up the attention so much, and she made the story into this whole overcoming thing where like she battled the patriarchy, ended up actually getting away from this man, like she's kind of the hero in the situation, but didn't show any emotion towards her kids. She went on the Oprah show and would crack jokes and have the crowd laughing. So the police ended up asking her to do a reenactment of this event. And it's truly one of the weirdest videos that you will ever see, because she seems like she's having fun, Any mom being put through this would have found this to be extremely traumatic to relive this event. Instead, she's having fun, smirking, checking herself out in the car mirror, ends up hitting her arm on the steering wheel and says that almost hurt as bad as when, and cuts herself off. And it seems like she was about to say as when I shot myself. Part 6 to the Diane Downs case. So after seeing this horrific reenactment, people just flat out are not believing her anymore, especially whenever she said this whole thing took place in like 5 to 10 seconds. And she did not take the criticism very well, literally stating, if I had shot my own children, wouldn't I have done a good job of it? She's literally gaslighting people who are letting her know that things aren't adding up. Back at the hospital, Christy is starting to improve a lot, but she's still nonverbal. Her mom ends up coming to visit her actually, and her heart spikes. So the police are starting to want to have her as a witness, and they immediately get her in with a therapist. They practice by her writing down the shooter on a piece of paper and her throwing it into a fire, until eventually she feels safe enough to give it to the therapist. And once she did, it said her mom. The police went to go check Diane's house, found bullet casings that matched those at the crime scene, and also found a diary with intros about Robert, and talking about how Robert doesn't want kids. So then the police had their motive. Which Oprah even brought up to her that the man was now afraid of her because he thought she had shot her own kids. She tried to change her story a few more times, but she ended up getting arrested. Part 7 to the Diane Downs case. So by the time it was time for her trial, she was pregnant again. She said she did it because she missed her kids and was lonely. But honestly, I feel like she did it just because she thought her sentence wouldn't be as bad. They ended up playing the song Hungry Like the Wolf in the courtroom, and Diane was jamming out to it. They showed the tapes, and she showed no emotion. They even did a doll reenactment for the jury to paint a picture. And then Christy testified, saying that her mom had actually stopped the car when she thought they were all asleep, went to the trunk, came around, and ended up shooting them. Cheryl first, Danny second, and her last. Wrapped herself in a towel and proceeded to drive slowly to the hospital. So ultimately, Diane was found guilty. And to this day, she is still in complete denial, thinking that she is still innocent. She ended up having the baby girl in jail, and she was immediately taken from her. This daughter was adopted, and Danny and Christy were actually adopted by one of the prosecutors on the case. Overall, it was a pretty happy ending. But Diane actually successfully broke out of jail for a little bit. If you want to hear that story, come over to my Instagram. It'll be on my middle reels tab. Why does the entirety of the Denver International Airport have barbed wire facing inwards? Almost like a prison, it's trying to keep something in. The Denver International Airport is home to so many conspiracy theories. I went there several times within my own traveling, and whether you believe the conspiracy theories or not, it is so hard to argue that the entire airport is not suspicious. DIA was built as a replacement to the Stapleton Airport, even though nothing was wrong with the airport before. It was supposed to be done in 1993, but it didn't end until 1995, the final budget being $4.8 billion. And if you guys don't know this, that exceeds normal airport price. And to put it into even more perspective, this airport and its grounds are bigger than Manhattan. So what was the purpose of making it so big and expensive? The builders for the DIA worked under multiple contractors, so it's rumored that no one knows the true scope of this project. But maybe the architects wanted it this way. It's filled with strange markings, underground tunnels, and apocalyptic themes. So the first thing that I'm going to be starting with is Blucifer. I feel like a lot of people already know about this demon-eyed horse that stands out in front. The reason that Blucifer got his name, his actual name is just Blue Mustang, was because he ended up killing his creator. As he was building, the head ended up falling off, hitting his leg, cutting into an artery. And to add to the creepiness, it has red glowing eyes whenever you look at it from a certain angle. So everyone in Colorado pretty much just refers to it as Blucifer. Many people think that the red eyes are a nod to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but an artist said it's just to honor the wild spirit of the American West. Weird. Also in the front of the airport, there's a tile with a picture of a cart on it. In the cart, it says AUAG, like for silver and gold. But some people think that this is referring to a deadly strain of hepatitis called Australian antigen, which is believed to be a part of biological warfare. And while I originally thought that this was kind of far, the man who discovered Australian antigen was actually a part of the team that founded the airport. And there's more that stays on this apocalyptic theme. Welcome to the next part of Denver International Airport. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Great Hall. In there is a plaque with the dedication for the airport on there, and they dedicated it to the New World Airport Commission, which is an organization that doesn't even exist or has ever existed. So why would this even be a dedication? Under this capstone, there is a time capsule. This is set to be open in 2094, but no one knows what's inside of it. There's symbols and markings in this said to be dedicated to the Freemasons, which carry their own separate theories about being linked to the Illuminati. A lot of people also say that from an aerial view, the airport looks like a swastika, but honestly, I don't really think it's noticeable unless you're really, really looking for it. And the other things is the creepy murals. These were designed by Leo Tanguma. One is called World Dream of Peace, and the other is in peace and harmony with nature. However, they're depicting themes of death and again, apocalyptic times. I'm pretty sure a soldier stabbing a dove means the exact opposite of peace. And there's literally children in caskets, but don't worry, it doesn't stop there. Welcome back to Denver International Airport. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about the tunnels. There are 6 underground layers and possibly more. And it's thought that the tunnels that exist underneath go all the way from Colorado Springs Air Force Base to the Air Force Base on Cheyenne Mountain. There's theorized to be bunkers down here and that it's potentially made as a safe place for the world's elite during the apocalypse. A huge part of this theory lies with author Alex Christopher. She met some people at a conference in Denver who were able to take her down to the tunnels. She took her friend Phil Schneider with her. And down there, they were able to get pictures. I'll insert them here. But not long after this, Schneider apparently unalived himself, which again, after coming out with this information, is extremely suspicious. Also, there was 5 buildings that were originally built for the airport but didn't quite work out. So instead of destroying these buildings, they just buried them and then continued to build on top of them. Even the constructor was very confused on why he was requested to do this. So because of this, how do we know how many extra buildings or hangars there are? And what exactly are the specific conspiracy theories surrounding this apocalyptic themed airport? So what exactly are people theorizing involving the Denver International Airport? Well, the 2 huge ones is that it's either connected to the Illuminati or to the apocalypse, and may even potentially be the Illuminati headquarters. So the Freemasons have so many conspiracy theories surrounding them about them being linked to the Illuminati. And there's several Freemason markings around this airport. The airport is also just so expensive, and maybe they got their funding from the Illuminati. The exchange may have been money for headquarters. And the tunnels make it very, very easy to move in and out. And if you're a secret society running the nation, why wouldn't you be located at an airport? The other theory, like I stated before, is that this is for the apocalypse, to keep the elite inside. Just because of how the tunnels are set up in the rumored bunkers, and with all of the hints being around the airport, and the Australian antigen, it's giving us very much apocalyptic New World Order vibes. But also the barbed wire facing in is very concentration camp-like. Either way, this airport has fully embraced these conspiracy theories. They have an animatronic gargoyle that sits out in front and talks to you about them, which making a joke about it would be the easiest way to cover it.